Hi, Dire Regulus here. Welcome to the Dire Pirates. Today I'll be the captain navigating you through the hints that the cover of Volume 25 gave us just beyond the Yonkos that were to come for the final saga. And before we jump into this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. The channel's still pretty young and any encouragement really helps for the growth. Now that I'm done begging, let's jump into this one. So the cover of Volume 25 of One Piece has probably been living rent-free in the brains of most One Piece fans since the last few days just because of how hard of a troll it is by Oda. The cover of the volume that came out in early September of 2002 actually foreshadows the Yonkos of the story's final saga. You know, the ones that were revealed just last chapter? Honestly, the disrespect that Oda puts us through is out of this world. The man has no equal. And looking at the cover, I totally understand how many just stopped at the Yonkos that are foreshadowed, but there's actually more, I think, that was foreshadowed on that same cover, because it shows two elements aside of the new Yonkos on it. One of them is the Master of the Diggers that's encountered in just one chapter by Buggy and his crew. His inclusion on the cover in itself was a huge hint towards a lot of elements that are happening right now in One Piece. I've covered those a bit in a short that I've posted. I'll leave a link for that in the video's description. The other element on the cover that I don't think many have looked into is the goat, and this is the one that threw me through a rabbit hole that is the reason why you're looking at this video right now. Because that goat is Vegapunk. I'm kidding. Don't leave. I'm kidding. It's not Vegapunk. That's not the theory. Okay, in all seriousness, for those who maybe never noticed or maybe don't remember, that goat is Sengoku's goat. And that's kind of the name we're going to have to go with, Sengoku's goat, because out of the hundreds of recurring characters that Oda has, he's one of the very few that does not have a name. And that's pretty impressive given how this goat has been present for very major events in the story of One Piece. Let's just take a quick look at its appearances. Let's start with pre-time skip. First appearance of the goat is in chapter 234, when the warlords are all meeting up after Crocodile has been defeated and we need a replacement. The meeting that Lafitte crashes. The goat's right there with Sengoku. Second time we see the goat is in chapter 390. It's right there beside Sengoku eating while Kuma reports after the events of Thriller Bark, how he let the Straw Hats escape. The third time we see the goat is chronologically the first time we see it. It's in chapter 396 in the flashback for what happened in Ohara. We see that the goat is present with Sengoku when he gives the order to Saul to attack Ohara. Then there's chapter 550 on the execution platform with Sengoku and Ace, where the goat is chilling right behind Sengoku. It's the moment where Sengoku tells the Marines that are present and everyone else that's there at Marineford that Ace is actually Goldie Roger's son. And the last time before the time skip that we see the goat is in chapter 581. The goat's right there beside Sengoku when he's told about the escapees of Impel Down. And that's just pre-time skip. Post-time skip, that goat actually has two more appearances. The first time is in chapter 801 on the boat on the way out of Dressrosa, where Sengoku is talking to Fujitora. The goat's right there beside him. It's actually in the final panel right before the beginning of the conversation between Doflamingo and Suru. That great conversation that ends up with this banger of a statement by Doflamingo. And the goat's last outing is in chapter 957, probably his best of all. He basically co-stars the whole time with Sengoku, revealing the story about Rock's Dieselback to the rest of the Marines that are present there. That's also the chapter when we get the drop about God Valley. So what can we gather out of this? The goat is pretty much present every time like an important pre-existing story element is revealed to the reader or to the open world. But what does its presence on the cover of Volume 25 signify? I think Sengoku's goat is foreshadowing something different than the final Yonkos. Given that we've determined that the goat is linked to important reveals and Sengoku, I think it means that Sengoku has one last thing to reveal in the final saga of the story. And I've looked into the old man's background and relationships, and I'm pretty sure I've figured out what the ex-fleet admiral has in store for the whole world. And that's his little project he's been working on in his retirement. Something called Sword. That's right, I'm pretty sure Afro Buddha is the mastermind behind the new secret organization that was recently revealed. And to make sense of this, we're going to have to look a bit into Sengoku's background. Sengoku spent the majority of his life believing in justice, thinking that pirates are scum and obeying the harshest orders that could come from the world government or the Gorosei. The harshest of these, though, have mostly been given earlier in his life or very early in the One Piece story. Otherwise, Sengoku has been becoming way more human in his approach, especially as he gets older. Marineford really was a turning point for him. The Gorosei chose to save face instead of revealing the truth, which was kind of the beginning of the end of Sengoku's desire to be the fleet admiral. He no longer believed in absolute justice or accepted it as he previously did, and absolute justice is the form of justice that a Kainu believes in. That's why as he resigned, his recommendation for a successor was Aokiji and not a Kainu. Aokiji is basically the polar opposite of a Kainu on his perspective of justice. And ultimately, they went with a Kainu. He's the one who became Fleet Admiral after Sengoku. I think that's the moment Sengoku decided to go full on with his project, Sword. Having different marine agents infiltrate various powerful groups is hardly new for Sengoku. It's something he did with Kuzan, who he considered his own son. To me, that means that it's something that he's willing to undertake with people that he believes in or relates to. And to add some argument as to why Sengoku is the mastermind behind Sword, the only person he's taken in as his own son, aside of Kuzan, is X-Drake, who's one of the only two other Sword agents we know of. So knowing this, what is Sengoku's goal with Sword? I think Sword has two good reasons to exist. Number one, keeping tabs on the various powerful groups across the world of One Piece. It would probably give him more reliable information than what he can get from Akainu or the Five Elders, and that's even if the Five Elders still speak to him after he's resigned from his position as Fleet Admiral. Number two is, I think, being a failsafe for the current Marine Administration. Should they be taken down? Should they decide to undertake some immoral directive by the Five Elders? Something like a great cleansing? Sengoku could decide that, no, let's go. We gotta take them out and take their place. If Cypher Pole is the Aegis shield that's made to protect the nobles, Sword is the organization made to attack them. So let's have a look at what the organization looks like so far. So as I've mentioned, at the head I think we have Sengoku, who's separate from the operation, but below him has a structure that's very similar to the Marine structure. So we would have a commander above someone like the captain like that Drake is, and the commander would be the equivalent of the Fleet Admiral. Below him, the captain like Drake is would be the equivalent of a admiral. So there would be 3 captains, and below them we have the equivalent of vice admirals, which are the normal agents. I don't think there's any father below this within Sword. So we have X-Drake that slots in as one of our 3 captains. We have Kobe that slots in as a normal agent. So who are the other ones? Let's start with who Sengoku would put at the head of this. If the Marines are to fall, who does he want to be the head of the new operation? Well, that's probably one of the easiest ones, as he's already given the recommendation. It's Aokiji. Well, actually now Kuzan, so it's Kuzan. Let's have a look at what we know of Kuzan post-time skip. He's affiliated with the Underworld and then with the Blackbeard Pirates, 2 groups that are highly out of his character to affiliate to. Would make much more sense for it to all be under the guise of a mission for Sengoku. Kuzan's the guy Sengoku believed in. That would also make sense that Sengoku would have sent him to infiltrate one of the most dangerous pirate groups, the Blackbeard Pirates. So yeah, Kuzan's at the head of Sword. He's the guy that Sengoku wants to replace Akainu with. Who do we have under him? So we know we have Drake, but who are the 2 others? My first candidate, Trafalgar the Water Law. Law is basically Sengoku's spiritual grandson through Kuzan, and he kind of has a soft spot for him. Sengoku has also had his eye on the Straw Hats since about Water 7 or so. It would make a lot of sense for him to ask one of his agents to infiltrate them. And I don't think that there's any better candidate than Law to fill that role. Obviously, Law would be kind of a loose cannon in this organization, but his goals can kind of align with Sengoku at times. Law is violent, unforgiving, murderous, even with Marines in general, but there's also a part of him that seems to look to help people. There's a lot of stuff he does in Wano that he doesn't have to do if his sole goal is to resolve the mystery of the D clan, but yet he chooses to do so, so there's some good in the guy. I guess it's the doctor in him. And taking down a Yonko like Kaido, who's very bad for a whole country, I believe is something that would be in line with Sengoku's values, so I don't think the alliance or the raid on Onigashima is something that excludes Law from this possibility. Also, am I the only one who thinks that the interactions between Law and Drake and Wano are really weird? Like they have this, ooh, let's not get caught vibe. Just something that I feel adds to this possibility, honestly. And at number 3, the final captain of Sword, I believe, is Smoker. Smoker hasn't really talked to Sengoku directly very much, not ever even, I think, but the way he talks about justice to Tashigi in Arabasta is very similar to the way Sengoku talks about justice to Kong in the anime. Not very developed in the manga there, although, but it still works. Smoker has some sort of adaptive view to justice, like what's needed, what's the best in the moment, and that's a view that's starting to fall in line with the way Sengoku is starting to see the world as well. On top of it, when Smoker mentions to Aokiji that he wants to be transferred to the G5 branch, Aokiji says I'll have to run it by Sengoku. That means Sengoku is very likely aware of Smoker's unusual ideology. Recruiting him would allow Sengoku to have a set of eyes on the Grand Line, and also have someone he can assign to more direct tasks when needed, a bit like what happened on Punk Hazard. So now that we have our 3 captains of Sword, who else do we see as agents alongside Kobe? First up, CP0 Agent Guernica. Not sure if that's the way you say it. He's one of the few CP0 agents that we don't know priorly from CP9, and from what we learned in chapter 1053, he's the one that pushed the picture of Luffy in Sun God Nika form without the approval of the Gorosei. This is highly unusual for a CP agent to go over the Gorosei, and it would line up very well with Sengoku's envy to avoid repeating the type of cover-ups that happened in Marineford. Sengoku would most likely want the world to know the truth about what is happening in Wano. And otherwise, CP0 has no reason of wanting to help Morgans sell more newspapers. Last time one of their guys was around him, he got his lights knocked out by him. Now, the last 3 guesses I have are long shots. I'm not quite as convinced that they're part of Sword, but I could see them working as members still. Now, I think Sword is probably already involved in maybe a group or an organization that we don't know yet. Something that's to come in the story, maybe something from Elbaf or another story arc that we don't know of yet. And a safe bet to make would be to assume that one of those future story arcs would involve members of the worst generation that have not yet been involved. There's not many of those. And since Kuma used to be a subordinate of Sengoku, my bet would go on Jewelry Bonnie. I see it as a possibility that Sengoku could be trading info on Kuma with her in exchange for her services. Another possibility is one of the revolutionary commanders. A mole is very possible given how the Levely played out for them. Something caused their operation to go sideways and made them clash with Fujitora and Ryokogyu, and it seems it didn't end too well. And out of the revolutionary commanders, I think all of them are possible candidates, except maybe Morley, given her age and long history with the Revolutionary Army. But that means the possibilities are basically Bello Betty, Karasu, Lindbergh, and Sabo as well. Now, the reason I say all of these are possibilities is simply because I don't think Sword and the Revolutionary Army are necessarily going to be enemies down the line. I could very well see them as reluctant allies that have overlapping goals and help each other. And the final possible agent of Sword is one that is much weaker on the power scale level, but much stronger on the influence level. It is the Celestial Dragon Don Quixote Miosgard. Again, this would fit Sengoku's theme of kind of going for things related to Corazon, his spiritual son. And also, Mjosgard is pretty unique for his worldview given his social class. Even though he's a celestial dragon himself, he also believes in the equality and well-being of everyone over the importance of the world government, the Gorosei, and the celestial dragons themselves. He's stated himself that he considers himself a human. And dear God, did he put Charlos back in his place, and that was so satisfying as well. He could easily be a set of eyes on the nobles for Sengoku within Sword. And those are the ones I can see as very viable possibilities. Yeah, I know there's another one. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I can't really get away making a video about an organization called Sword, not talk about him, right? Here we go. Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world. Okay, so honestly, I don't see Mihawk being a member of Sword. It would be way too on the nose. And honestly, the only reason I'd see him partake would be to infiltrate Shanks' crew, and I don't think he has any inclination to do so. Like at that point, if you think Mihawk is a member of Sword because of that symbolism, might as well think Vista is a member of Sword to like infiltrate the ex-Whitebeard members, but again, that makes no sense. So no, Mihawk is not in Sword. I'll also add that while I said that Law is one of the 3 captains of Sword, I highly think that he will defect or maybe even die by the end of the story and no longer be one of the 3 captains of Sword, just so Kobe can take his place. And whenever Sword takes over the Marines, Kobe will be one of the 3 admirals. And I know this sounds crazy, especially given the power levels showed off by Green Bull in the last chapter, but I don't think the current iteration of the Marines goes down because of Sword either. I think someone else takes them out. Sword will simply be the ones to take over the Marines afterwards. And they'll take over as an organization that prioritizes ideology and morality, headed by Kuzan, before prioritizing power. And I think an organization like that is much more adapted to the type of world that the story will finish in. I think a free world like what we're going towards will be much more in line with this. So this is it. What I think Sword is, who I think is in it. Okay, jump to the comments. Let me know what you think of this theory. If you think someone else is in Sword, if you think Sword does something else, I'd be super interested to know. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a look at the short that I made that's in relation to the other part of the cover of volume 25. And again, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.